Hi everybody, welcome back. In today's episode, we're going to carry on the Tamiya Stug 3B, and we're going to focus on decaling. And you can see here, I've already put some decals, however you want to call it, on some parts of the vehicle. I've put them on the front and on the left side, but I've left the right side and the rear vehicle, or the rear part of the vehicle where there are decals free, so we'll do that on the episode. We'll do that on film here, and we'll show you how to use some of these setting products that we have here. We'll go through them in detail, but we've got the microscale, microset, and microsol. We've got, I think, which is a really great product for dealing with especially thick decals, which is this Decal products decal setting or decal setting strong. I've also got some Mark Fit Strong, which is also good for especially thick decals. And I think the secret, and I've talked about this in other episodes, is using this Model Master Acryl Gloss. This stuff is amazing. And the reason why it's amazing is because when you spray it on the model, it doesn't alter the base color. It doesn't darken it. If you use, I've used Future in the past, and that darkens the base color. So what happens is if you just want to spray one part of the vehicle, like this panel here, where we're going to put a Balkenkreuz and some insignia and a number, this would be much darker than the rest of the vehicle. And even when you put a matte spray back over it, it comes back a little bit, but it still ends up being darker. So it alters the whole color. So using other products, gloss products, you run the risk of either you have patches or you have to spray the whole vehicle to make it uniform. This doesn't, so it seems to just sit on top of the paint. It doesn't seem to penetrate it to darken it, and it's this is something that Harvey Lowe put me onto, and ever since it's been my go-to gloss for decaling. And again, for the simple reason that you can just spray a portion of the vehicle that you're putting your decal on, put your decal, and then gloss coat it or do a matte coat or whatever to bring it back in line with the rest of the finish, and it doesn't alter anything. And you can see I've done that here. We'll get closer up when we actually start doing it. I'll show you. But I've just sprayed this front panel here for this tactical marking, and then put a matte coat over it, and the color comes back. It's truly wonderful stuff. So go to your local hobby shop and stock up on this. As much as you can. This is the magic secret right here. So we'll get ready. We'll start cutting up. Well, I should mention. So in previous episodes, I talked about using the Star decals set, and then after looking at I just decided to go with the Tamiya. These are the ones that come with the kit, and they give you a wide range of markings for the Abteilung 192. So I decided to go with the 2nd Battalion, which is the red skull and crossbones here. And they have all of the required tactical markings. I also didn't like the Balkenkreuz that came with the Star Decal kit. It had, it just looked a little bit off, so I decided to use the Tamiya one. I was debating user Archer transfers, but after the challenges I had with the Brumbar getting those dry transfers on there, I decided to stay away from it, although that probably would have been an easier thing to do on this. But anyway, using these decals, and the challenge with Tamiya decals is they look very nice and all that, but they tend to be a little bit on the thicker side. So there's a couple of things you can do to mitigate that, and we'll show you. And really, the secret there is just cutting away as much of the clear decal film as possible, which I did on a number of these. So we'll let Robert get closer in. We'll get a tin of water, and we'll start applying. We'll show you how to apply decals on the two panels that don't have them yet. Okay, so we have, as I mentioned previously, so we've gloss coated this panel here. So if we look at our instruction sheet, we're doing this side of the vehicle. So we need to put a death's head insignia on this rear panel here, the aft panel. We need to put a Balkenkreuz here, and then we need to put a tactical number here on the other side of this grab handle. So pretty straightforward. So we're going to be so now. I mean, this tells you the instructions for the first company. So they use the white. They have the white skull head, and I like the red one. So we're gonna. So they tell you, they give you the options here for the second. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out. So here are the kit markings, and you can see. I don't know if Robert can pick it up. You can see there's a little more carrier film than you need on some of these numbers. And if I was really worried about carrier film, I might have done something like the 13, because that's kind of nice and tight. The 24 has a lot of carrier film kind of right in this area here that we should probably look at cutting out. So the secret to working with these decals, the thicker ones, the Tamiya ones, are really to get rid of as much of the carrier film as is feasibly possible without compromising the integrity of the decal itself. And then the Balkenkreuz here, there's not much on it, but again, we'll get in there with our trusty Tamiya scissors here to cut out as much of the carrier film as possible. And you can see doing that on this side here. So I put a gloss coat, put the Balkenkreuz on, cutting out as much as getting as close to the white as possible, and then put another gloss coat over it, and then put a matte coat over that. And it looks pretty much like it's painted on, and that despite it being a thicker decal. So it just goes to show you by doing that you can get a pretty close painted on effect. The other thing that's worth mentioning too is I know in previous builds where I've used the Mission model paints, I wouldn't put a dead flat. I would always mix the Tamiya flat with their 50-50 with their semi-gloss. You get a nice eggshell finish, and that's because of the Mission model paints. When they dry, they dry to an eggshell type finish. Especially when you add that poly additive. For the Tamiya lacquer paints that I used on this kit, they dry pretty flat. So I didn't use that same mix. I just went straight with Tamiya flat. And the reason why I use Tamiya flat and maybe not the flat equivalent of the Model Master Aqua is because I'll mix that with leveling thinner. So I thin the Tamiya flat with the Mr. Color leveling thinner. You can potentially use the new Tamiya lacquer thinner with retarder in it, but again, I have lots of this at home. So I thin it with that just to make sure that it goes on as smooth and as flat as possible, so that it doesn't bunch up and doesn't you don't get wrinkles or pooling or whatnot. So and then the finish is consistent in terms of the chemical composition, if you will. So that if I'm doing, we're going to do some streaking effects and some more, and add some oils and do some mapping and some rendering and whatnot. So you just want to make sure that the finish is consistent, so that it, you can pretty much anticipate how that's going to go, and you're not going to have an odd reaction with some parts of the vehicle that have a different finish on it. So getting back to this, so what we'll do is we'll cut out. So we're going to use this large guy here. So this is pretty much just a black square. So that's very easy to cut out. So we'll hit that with the scissors. We'll cut out this Balkenkreuz here, and then we'll cut out this large 24 here, and then we should be good to go, and we'll start applying them. I'll show you how to do that. So just cutting them again using the trusty Tamiya scissors. Just try and get as close. There we go. Just as close to this as possible. You can see there's just a trace of white. Here, I can snip that out from the rest of it. Put that somewhere safe. And then just trim. I wish it'd be nice if all decaling was this simple in terms of separating from the sheet. There you go. So that's pretty good. The majority of the film is off. There's just a tiny bit. So that's about as close as my comfort zone will allow me to get. I'll leave that there. Put these to the side. So now we'll attack that Balkenkreuz here. So again, using the Tamiya scissors and getting pretty close. And you don't have to take it all off. You just have to sort of cut as as long as you're getting as close as possible. Yeah, this might be easier to do if I cut this out. So let me do that. And if you don't already have a pair of these Tamiya scissors, they are fantastic. I've had these for, I don't know, 10 years now, 12 years maybe, and they still cut pretty. I only use them for really just cutting decal sheets, decal sheets. I'm a little bit schizophrenic on the decal thing. So just cut this off here. Here we go. And then, well, let's see, I like to cut. So when you're cutting, I like to cut, if you're right-handed like me, you kind of cut to the right. Just like that. Now you could get this on a mat and use a proper knife, an X-Acto, what have you, but I think this is a little bit easier as long as your hands are somewhat safe. So I'm kind of bracing my hands against the table here. Now we have to get, now to cut the other side. I wonder if we can maybe like this, just to keep it on the right side. Kind of tilt that up, like that, and then cut. There we go. Because trying to cut on this side of it, you know, it's kind of hard to do, so let's cut off that tip there. So just take your time. And again, having a good pair of scissors is the key. Close enough. No, I could have saved myself this trouble by going with a different aftermarket set, or by using maybe even the dry transfers. But just wanted to show how you can make even some of the thicker Tamiya decals work. So there you go. Nice and separated, so we've done a good job of cutting as much of the decal film as possible. Gonna get rid of this. And a little scrap pile here. And now we go for the 24, which we'll cut that out. So the secret to this one is that they do a pretty good job of getting tight along the bottom. And then along the side here. Now you got to be careful because there's that little nib that comes out with a 4, and on the bottom too. So you want to cut those off. But just along the top. It's fairly easy to do. And then along the 2. Now the tricky part is getting inside the 2. So that one, we're going to have to... Now this one, you can make a case where this might be worth getting a knife to do it. But I find as long as you cut, like there seems to be a bit of a lip to these decals, as you can see here. Like, and I don't know if the light will print it, but if you can see that, you know, for this, so this is a white border that is supposed to go along the mud guards. I'm going to paint those and hairspray them and whatnot, so we're not going to use the decals. But you can see that there's a bit of a lip. And I just find if you get rid of that lip, so even if you cut just, even like you don't have to get right up to the white, but even if you just get rid of that, kind of that border, that helps. That seems to really help with the whole setting process when you start using the solutions and whatnot. So I don't think you have to get, I mean, get as close as you can, as long as you're, but you don't have to get right up to the white part or the color part, as long as you're nibbing or getting rid of that lip. So I think that's probably close enough. Or maybe what you could do is you could cut down in here. I don't know how much difference that's going to make, but let's take a knife to that. Well, okay. So that's good. I mean, it looks pretty rough, but I think it'll show up. It'll be fine on the kit. So we've got our three. Okay, let's get rid of these little scraps. We've got our three insignias. So now we just have to pick which order we're going to do them in, and I say we go from front to back. So let's do the 24. We just cut out. So what I do is I just kind of dip that, and then I let it kind of sit in a pool of water. Now usually I'd be doing this on a cutting mat, so I'm not doing it on a porous surface where the water would collect. Let's do this. Let's do it on here. I'll just get a little bit of water. There we go. I'll dry that up. So, in anticipation, what I like to do is I like to get the micro set. So what this does is it's kind of almost like I look at this as kind of like a prep. So it says on the bottle, softens decals and improves adhesion. And I think it's really the adhesion part that we like. So I use two different brushes. I have one for the micro set, and I have another one for the microsol that we're going to use here. And then I use that same one that I use in the microsol on the stronger stuff. So this stuff is not strong. So this is really safe to start with. But if you're using thicker decals, like the ones that come with Tamiya kits, or the ones that usually come with Hasegawa kits, or if you're doing aircraft and whatnot, yeah, you need to go right to the big boys here in terms of the strong setting solution. So this Decal product stuff is amazing. It's really good at getting decals to sit down over complex surfaces. And this is just, I think, kind of brute force setting solution. But if I have a choice between these two, I think the Decal products is the one I go with. So if you can find that at your local hobby store, grab some. So I'll prep the surface just by putting a little bit of the micro set on. So again, we're doing that tactical number. And it doesn't matter if it spills another part. It's a clear solution, and we'll wipe the excess away afterwards with a damp Q-tip. So if we get, let's see, yeah, this is good. So what I like to do is just get a little bit of it off. So I'll pin it with a good pair of tweezers, and then with a cotton bud, we'll just get that to slide on there, right? And switch hands. So just pull that off. And then once it's on the model, you can just kind of reposition it to where you want it to go. So check the references. So this is kind of lined up in the middle. So we can use that grab handle as a bit of a guide. So this is supposed to be right in the middle. So maybe we'll get that just a touch closer. And see if that's level. So I think the vertical placement is good. We just got to get it to level up horizontally. So I'm just going to move it so I can. think that's good. What do you think, Robert? Does it look straight to you?
Not sure.
Maybe down a bit, eh? So we're just positioning this up, so just trying to get it lined up. As good as we can.
Perfect.
Push that in just a touch. Up a bit here. So this is the agonizing part, is just getting her. Which is kind of why I much prefer using wet transfer decals over the dry transfers, because once the dry transfer is on, it's on. There's no. So you better make sure, when you're using a dry transfer, you better make sure you've got it lined up and taped up properly. Yeah, I think that's good. So we'll let that sit. And in the meantime, so we'll just button that up so that if my clumsy hands knock it over, it doesn't spill. So we'll go with the Balkankreuz next. So same thing, dip that in the water just a little bit, and then set that on a non-porous surface and just let the water do its trick. And we'll go back and start putting micro set on. So you notice I didn't put all three in the water at the same time, and the reason for that is that you want to make sure that you have you pay attention to the decals that you do. Like, you don't want to be rushing on this, right? You've spent all this time, building and making whatever additions or modifications or enhancements, and then priming and painting and modulating and filtering, and then some washes. So do yourself a favor and do your decals one at a time. Yeah, 24 looks pretty good. And again, they're very bright. We're just putting them on. We're going to, incorporate them into the weathering process going forward. Now, I did mention that up to this point, I had put washes on the vehicle. So I'm just going to switch over to the rear. So this is a great thing to do. So this is where we have another 24 and another skull insignia on this rear. I think these are the smoke grenade dischargers. There's a rear protecting plate for that, and there's some bolt detail here. So because of that, I didn't bother putting washes around the bolts. So what we're going to do is, when we put the decals on, we'll get them to sit over, we'll coat them, and then protect and put the flat on. Let them dry for a couple of days, and then we'll go and we'll start doing washes over, so that if the, I can't remember, the 24 goes, yeah, 24 goes on this side here. So the 24 will have some bolts in it. So we'll put a wash around those bolts once the decal's on, again, to incorporate it. So normally what you would do is I would put the decals on after doing the filters. But because there was only that one spot where there was a decal that went over any type of detail, I didn't bother. Okay, so let's see how we're doing. So this should have started to separate. Oh, well, bit of a problem there. So you see our decal broke off, but that's not the end of the world. We'll show you how to recover from that. So what we do is we'll take, just wet this a little bit more. We'll take this and maybe just with the old Mark 1 finger get that on. Okay, and then we'll go back and get this piece here. So I guess that's the price of cutting too close. And we'll just get some liquid and then put that up like that. So minor complication, but nothing we can't recover from. So just get that, try and line it up as best as possible. Now the smart thing to do would be to get the part, the larger part, to set up, and then get that lined up, and then do the smaller part. Let's just check our references. So that has this. Yeah, I got pretty much in the middle. It's way too small. I think the thing to do here would be to paint. Yeah, I want to paint this. Or we take this off and do a dry transfer.
Perfect.
Almost. Get rid of that piece. I don't need it. No, it's not quite perfect. There. I think that's perfect. Yeah. Yeah, so I think we got this. I think we got this fixed. So there's just a slight crack because we notice that there's a little sliver, but we'll touch that up maybe with a little bit of paint. And I think under a gloss coat and a matte coat, you won't notice that there's anything off of it. So yeah, I think it looks good. Okay, so we were able to recover from that one, thankfully. So let's do the last piece. Now, fortunately, the last piece is the big square one, so that should be the easiest of the bunch to do. I don't seem to have a lot of luck doing any decaling or decaling or dry transfers on camera. That's always something that goes wrong. But hey, that's modeling, right? That's what being able to recover from those issues is what it's all about. So what I might do is get just another coat of this on both here. So we'll get it just a little bit on the 24 and be very careful about how we apply this so that we don't muck up what we have there. And what I might do is, because the model is on I might just put this just to get that somewhat level. And then we'll prep this part here for the next one. Let's see how we're doing. It still needs a little bit of water or a little time to release. Okay, so now this is releasing. So again, just use the old Mark 1 finger there. And then just position this where you want it to go. And again, we'll check our references, and this, again, pretty much centered. And you can see on the other ones where I applied more of that microset solution, it's kind of softened them up and it's wrinkled them up a bit, but that's good, that's what you want, and then they'll kind of settle down nice. And in the meantime, we'll look at, draw some of it. We added some water. Let's draw some of that up here. Good. And then we can get this to sit properly. So we're just, again, setting these, trying to make sure that they're kind of equally spaced. And we want to get this one. Maybe down a bit. I think that looks good. Okay, so I think we're happy with the placement of the skull insignia. And I think it's important to mention that if there are any bubbles that come up, and we don't have any here, but if there are, just get a sharp, like this is a scriber that I have, or a pin, or even the end, the sharp end, the pointy end of an X-Acto blade, just to poke it. But if there's no bubbles present, obviously you don't need to risk damaging your decal. So I think we'll just maybe get a little bit more of that micro set. Just put it on top of this. And then we'll let that sit for a bit. And this is one of those things that you need to just you can't take a hairdryer to this. You just kind of need to let it do its thing and let it evaporate and dry normally. So we'll pause for a little bit while this happens off camera. And the reason why I don't want to go and do the back is because I want to let the solutions do their thing in kind of as level a surface as possible. It's not bad. So we'll take just a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and maybe start heating that with some microsol, and we'll start detaching the last 2 decals for this rear plate here. So we'll be right back. Okay, so the micro set has dried for the most part. So now we'll go to the microsol. So again, I'm using a different brush. Now this, so as much as the microset will help things stick and stay in place, the microsol will help things settle down. So just brush some on. And I like to do this first. And you can see how now that, this is one piece again, so. So I don't know if we necessarily need to do anything. And then. So we'll let that sit for a bit. Again, got to let it do its thing. Got to walk away from the model for a bit. And we'll come back in maybe another 5 minutes off camera. And then we'll start getting to some of the stronger stuff. Okay, so the microsol has just about dried. And what I like to do is at this point, they're still a little bit soft, but stuck enough in place they're not going to go anywhere, is just with a slightly moist Q-tip. And what you're doing is you're just getting rid of any air bubbles that might be underneath. Just kind of dabbing it. Just kind of pushing it into the surface. Now, because you've got a flat surface here, it doesn't you know, this doesn't make much of a difference, but just kind of get rid of, just push down the air pocket. And you want to make sure that the carrier film makes good contact with the underlying surface so that you don't get any air trapped in there. There we go. So we can see you can't really tell that this was in two pieces previously. Okay, so now let's go on to the, so we're gonna, I think the next step is we'll apply some of the strong setting solution, but before we do that, let's get the last two markings on the back. So we'll go back to our trusty micro set. So I've got the tactical number ready to go in a pool of water there on my non-porous surface. We'll just and then we'll take our tweezers, close that up, and there we go, and just put that, just hold it with your finger, there we go, and then we just got to go about placing. Now this is going to be a little bit difficult because of that bolt detail, but that's okay. So I think that looks good. So we'll let that sit. And while we're doing that, we'll get the last of the markings, which is the last skull, crossbones. We'll get that in water. So I'm just checking the other markings to see if there's any air bubbles. There's a few that are coming up, so while we're waiting that, I'm just gonna, again with a very sharp pin, just find the offending air bubble and just give it a bit of a pop. You just have to apply just a little bit of pressure. Don't dig into it because you'll get more than you bargained for. And then we'll just go over it again, just dab. There we go. That looks pretty good. So if it, I mean, a good indication is if it looks like it's already painted on without you having done another gloss coat on top of it, you're in pretty good shape, and I think that's what we were able to achieve with these markings. So again, I think the key, the secret to all of this, is to try and trim off as much as that of that carrier film as possible. So I think that's really paid off dividends here, despite the break. But again, you can see we're able to recover from that. So not the end of the world if the decal comes apart. Now, if there are some decal sheets that are, you know, if they're old or whatnot, or if they're not, if the carrier film isn't thick enough or the pigment isn't thick enough, they'll just shatter in water, and at that point there's nothing you can do. There's just too many pieces. But if it's just one piece or a couple of pieces, you can see how easy it is for us to recover. So let's get back to the rear. So I think our decal is ready to go. I think it's decal decal. I started off by saying decal, and then all of a sudden I started saying decal. I don't know what's right. Decal decal. Decal?
Yes.
Tomato tomato. You say decal, I say decal. There we go. So again, Same principle, just take that, use the old finger, put that in our scrap pile. And now the real estate on this might be a little tight, but I think that fits pretty good. So just checking the references. Yeah, I don't think we want that any over, so maybe where's my little guy? Here he is. So the nice part is about the skull markings is that it kind of lines up. The decal is perfectly sized. So again, if we hadn't trimmed tight around it, we'd have carrier film hanging up over the edges, and you don't want that. So all the more reason to keep trimming. That's good. So we'll just let that dry for a bit. And then we'll start going after it. We'll put another coat of the microset on, then we'll do the microsol, and then I think this one here, yeah, we'll call in the big guns and do the Decal products. Okay, so you can see that the microset is dried for the most part, but because of those underlying bolts, the decals, and again, these ones are fairly thick, so they're still sitting up. So now we're going to start applying the microsol. And what you're doing is you're just kind of pulling it on. And this will start the process of getting these decals to sit down over that bolt detail. So in real time, this is, you kind of apply it, you wait, you let it dry. You can't hair dryer it because that's going to defeat the purpose. You gotta let nature take its course here. And you want to make sure that, in this case, that everything's sitting kind of flat. So I'll hold this for a bit. We'll let it do its thing. I might apply another few coats of the microsol, but then we're going to get into the stronger stuff with the Decal products, decal setting solution, decal setting solution here. So we'll give that a few minutes, and then we'll come back with more applications. Okay, so we still have the microsol drying, and we're just going to start pressing down just a little bit. Now you can see the 24 is settling down nicely. And I'll just start pressing down, just again with a slightly moist Q-tip. And I will do the same. Now, I'm guessing that because there's two colors, there's the red and the black on the skull insignia, that it's a little bit thicker than just the white. But just start pressing that down. Like so. So this one here is still fighting us a bit, but that's okay. That's okay, we're almost done. And now what I'm going to do is start applying some of the thicker Decal setting solution here. And we'll let that set for a bit. So this is stronger stuff, and we'll just let that do its thing. Okay, so the Decal products decal setting solution is still working. But you can tell right away is like this corner is now starting to come down, and everything's starting and I haven't done anything. I haven't pushed it, or I haven't applied a Q-tip to it or anything like that. It's just the product working on its own. So things are starting to nicely settle down around the bolt detail. So again, we're just going to you just got to let nature take its course. Step away from the model, take a bit of a break, You don't have to be there to, like if this goes completely bone dry, and you come back and you apply more solution to it, it'll just pick up where it's left off, so it's not a problem. So this is one of those things where you can't rush it. If I try and, if I try and poke it with, we were trying to press it down with this, I really run the risk of damaging the decal. So let the solution do its thing. It's softening the decal. It's letting it settle down over the detail, and then once it dries, it should conform to everything very nicely. And then at that point, maybe it's safe to start applying some pressure. So we'll give that a few more minutes. We'll let it do its magic, and then we'll come back and take a look and see where we are. Okay, what I told you guys not to do, which was touch the decal while it still has the solution on it. I went ahead and did that and screwed up part of the lower corner here, as I was trying to kind of urge it along to settle along some bolt details. So didn't follow my own advice, and that's what I get for not following my own advice. So this should be a lesson to the rest of you. While this stuff is on, don't touch your decal. Walk away from it and come back when everything's settled and dry. So I'll have to look at maybe fixing that part with either I'll have to remove the decal, or more likely I think I can probably just fix it with a little bit of paint. And because it's at the rear of the vehicle, there's, again, armor modelers can always fall back on mud and weathering effects to cover up some errors. So I'll probably work on that off camera. But again, don't touch. I just touched it very lightly with this brush, as I was just trying to, and it just, obviously it's in a very delicate state, so don't touch it. But you can see how nicely the 24 has settled down. So no traces of any distortions because of that bolt detail here. Now there is a little bit of carrier film over it, but it looks like it's almost painted on. So again, that's a good sign. So I think we're good there. We'll just let that dry. I think that the trick for this part here is to let it dry and then see how that there's a bolt right kind of in the middle of the forehead of the skull there. So we'll see how that settles down over time. I'll probably just fix this a little bit with some paint. And I think, again, it's it's not catastrophic, but, again, don't muck with it while it's still wet and the solution's still doing this trick. So I think what we'll do next, and I don't think we'll be able to do this on camera for this episode, but what we'll do is once everything's dry and everything's incorporated and whatnot, we'll use the Model Master Aqua Gloss again. So we'll spray a coat on just to incorporate the decals into the gloss finish. And then I'll throw on a coat of the Tamiya Flat Clear. So this is from their acrylic range. This is XF86. I'll mix that probably 50-50 with leveling thinner. And I'm using the bottle of leveling thinner to prop up the model, so we'll use this. And again, the reason why is to just to make sure it goes on flat and smooth and level, so this thins very nicely. And that'll get us to the same point that we have, again, this looks like it's painted on, that looks like it's painted on. And, these are, these decals are on the thicker side of things. So I think later today off camera, I'll gloss this over and then get let it dry for the better part of the day, maybe 24 hours, and then hit it with another flat coat, and that should incorporate that fine. It is important to mention that once everything's dry, so before you put on your gloss coat, remember there's still a lot of product. Like we have a lot of setting solution that puddle up and dry. So what I'd like to do is, I won't do it here because these are probably still a little bit soft, is just dip a Q-tip in some clean water, get most of it off, and just kind of, clean up any of the remainder residual setting fluid. Because it, even though it's clear and it dries clear, when you gloss over it, you still may see some patchy spots where the setting solution kind of pooled up. So do yourself a favor, clean it, but make sure these are well dry. Like before I even think about touching these, I'll let these dry for at least another 4, 5, 6 hours type of thing. So I'll probably do it later today or tonight. And then I'll fix this one up and then gloss it so that next time you see the model, we'll have everything. So everything will look like this. Everything will look like these other sides that are finished. And then I think the next step will be to get on to painting the tools on the vehicle. So I think that will be the focus of the next episode. Will be the paint. So I'll have some of them painted, some of them not. Show you what I do with the acrylics, and show you what I do with oils to kind of create that wood grain effect. There is a decal or decal that will go here from Archer Fine Transfers for the. It's a decal that they have on all the fire extinguishers, so I'll have that on next time. And then we'll start getting to the really fun part, which is, we're going to put some mud, pigments. We're going to do some streaking along the top of the vehicle. I don't think we're going to go too crazy on it. Like, we'll again incorporate, make sure everything's consistent as I continue to preach. But for example, I really like the way this looks right now, so I want to try and preserve that. So I don't want to lose that look. The modulation, the washes, and whatnot. I don't want to lose the filters. I don't want to lose that when we do weathering. So we'll incorporate it, but we won't go too crazy. But I think this vehicle will be more weathered than what we saw on the both the MX-13 and what you guys briefly saw with the Curse Panther that I had. So we'll really kind of go to town on this from a weathering standpoint, and get some nice puddles and streaking on the front. All weathered underneath. And I'll probably start over time. I'll start before we get together next time. I'll probably start building that up and getting this ready to go. And then we'll kind of focus on after we do the tools, we'll focus on doing the weathering. And then of course there's the tracks. I'm probably going to have a spare length of track here that's pinned. Again, if you remember one of the pictures I showed in the first episode, I think we're going to want to have that loop of tracks. So hopefully there's enough spare. With the Master Club tracks I'm going to be using, the resin tracks I'm going to be using here. So, yeah, so well on our way. I think, pretty happy. We were able to recover from that one. Just got to fix up my stupid mistake on this here, which, not too bad, but again, didn't need to do that. Just let the product do its thing, and you're good to go. So. Yeah, so I think that'll do it for this episode. So thanks for hanging in there with me, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next time. Thanks again.